Okay, we are live. It is midday. I hope that you have your lunch at the ready and are excited for some interesting storytelling. And a new word you'll be learning today, story selling. My name is Nic Haralambous. I am here to talk with Rich Mulholland about his new book, Here Be Dragons. Rich is hiding in the wings. I'm going to do a quick intro. Then we're going to play you a short 1-minute video about his incredible book. As many of you are streaming in, I'm going to give it a couple of minutes just to let people plow in. There are hundreds of people joining as we speak. So a little bit of housekeeping. There is chat on your right-hand side. There is a Q&A section on your right-hand side. Please feel free to chat to Rich and I. We will be looking at the chat and waiting for you to ask us some questions, which we will pull out and engage with. The questions, please ask them either in the Q&A or the chat. In the chat, they might get lost. But do me a favor, while you're in the chat, to get to know it, tell me who you are, tell me where you're from, tell me why you're here, tell me if you've heard Rich speak before, tell me something in the chat, so that I know that you're alive and awake and ready and waiting. So we do have tons of people streaming in. So what I'm going to do is get started, and I'm going to introduce Rich. Rich is one of the smartest people I know, and a lot of people say that, but I really mean it. He plays board games almost as much as he reads books, which is an unusually large amount. He's one of the most unique speakers I've had the fortune to listen to and learn from, and he is an ideas man second to none. Amongst many, many other things, including a passion for the band Rise Against, Rich and I share a love for stories and storytelling, which is what we're going to be talking about today. He founded his business Missing Link in 1997, and I was 13 at the time. That is how long Rich has been helping presenters engage and activate audiences and tell better stories. Today, we're here to talk about his new book, Here Be Dragons. And I was going to introduce this book, but actually a friend of mine and Rich's named Stephen, all the way in Ireland, did an incredibly good short video on Rich's book. And I'm going to play that video for you now. Rich, if you are listening, please mute your line. I shall do the same so that the video can play pleasantly. Please, for your pleasure, Stephen Short talking about Rich's new book.
If you're an entrepreneur or doing any kind of sales for your business, you know that story selling is fundamentally important. The only problem is there are two types of stories: your stories and the stories that your clients actually care about. When you're talking with actual and potential clients, telling them your story, unfortunately, just isn't going to resonate as much as you think. It's all about telling them a new story about their future. It's about helping them to slay their dragons. One of the biggest problems with this is that many clients don't even know what their dragon is to slay. This is where Rich comes in with his fantastic new book, Here Be Dragons. Now, I was lucky enough to get an advance copy here in Dublin, but the book is now available globally on Kindle. It's packed with valuable, thought-provoking and practical wisdom to help you to sell better. The only bullshit you'll hear from Rich is when he's calling you on yours. Get yours today and start story selling better.
Okay, so without any further ado, I want to bring Rich onto the stage to tell us why he wrote this book and who on earth should be reading it. Rich, please join me and let's get going. Hey, man.
Hey, dude. Thanks so much for that lovely intro.
I do my best. It's the first time in our very long friendship that I've actually introduced you with a formal bio, which is weird. I hope it was okay. Yeah.
He usually just looks at the people and says, yeah, this asshole, and starts from that. So this is very, very nice to hear the other side of it. And I look forward to being able to return the compliment sometime.
Ah, sick, man. Okay, so to kick us off, why did you write this book? And tell me who should be reading it.
So let's go one step back. Why I wrote the content. Last year, with us starting to present online, obviously, like everybody else, we realized that we could be communicating to people all over the world. This was a great big level up for us, and it was really quite exciting. But the old techniques that we had of jumping around in boardrooms and just winning people over by sheer missing linkness, because we have a very unique flair to us, and people kind of get caught like deers in the headlights. What doesn't translate as well to this medium. And so we knew that we had to change the way we thought about things, and it needed to be more strategic about how we did it. Now, I'd started flirting with the idea of story selling a few years before at an event I did for Think Sales, and I wrote a short little ebook called Good Story Bro. And that became Story Seller, which basically, that was 20 odd pages, and that became the whole book of Here Be Dragons. Over the year that I'd been trying to refine our sales technique internally, I was making lots of notes and trying to really dial in what works. The same way you dial in a speech. You try something, you test it. Does it work? Does it not work? What goes on? And I did the same with our sales process. And then in the realization that I'd created something that worked for us, I realized that a lot of what I was working on was universally appropriate. And that's when I reached out to my publisher and I said, hey, Tracy, I think we got something here. Can I write a book of this? And she said, sure. Now, the book is sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, just to answer the second part of your question, at face value, the book is for salespeople. This might make a lot of people think, well, then this book is not for me. I think the first mistake that people make is that they don't realize they're salespeople. We're all selling ideas. We're all trying to persuade human beings about our concepts and our ideas to try and get people to take different actions. We're all in sales. And this was a book on persuasion and eloquence. I think it is in the business context, very specifically for salespeople, and there's a lot written for them, but it's for anybody who wants to motivate for a raise, for an increase, or to sell their ideas to other humans. Then that's who I wrote the book for. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't just for your typical sales professionals.
Yeah, I mean, in a very binary way in the world right now, you're either selling or being sold to. So you may as well understand this story selling concept. But I want to jump back to that smirk that you got in your face when you said you just pinged your publisher and said, hey, I think I'm onto something. There's actually a little bit more of a fun story around you physically writing this book. So, I mean, maybe talk to us about how you wrote the book, how long it took, like what kind of rapid iteration, because something that I get asked a lot about my books is, how long did it take you to write this book? And sometimes I'm embarrassed to say that my first book took me like 7 or 8 weeks to write. You trumped that.
Yeah, so I actually got into a fight with somebody with my last book, Boredom Slayer, when I wrote a blog post afterwards, and I'd said that I'd written, the writing process itself took 36 hours. And in fact, if you think about it, writing, a certain amount of words doesn't take that long. When I phoned Tracy and I said to her, hey, listen, I want to, and we've got some debate, Tracy and I, around why this rush was, but I'm very glad it happened because it did force me, that line by Duke Ellington, you don't need time, what you need is a deadline. And Tracy came back and said, sure, but then I need to get the manuscript for you in 2 weeks. So I had 2 weeks, but this wasn't 2 weeks of writing because I had my regular job was already set up. So that was nights and weekends to write the book. Luckily, the way that I research is always using idea traps. So I had lots of the concepts preloaded. And in fact, the reason I wanted to write this as a book is there was so much core content there. But the book itself was written frantically over a 2-week period, 2 weekends. I ended up asking Tracy for 1 extra weekend. So it was, instead of being 2 weeks and 1 weekend, it was 2 weeks and 2 weekends. And the entire book was put together in that period of time.
Which is mildly irritating to me because it is so good, in spite of only having taken you 2 weeks to write. And I have to say, so I've got my copy here. I've actually read this twice. I was fortunate enough to read the PDF before it was published, and I've now read it again. And I just keep getting more and more value out of it every time I read. But before we go on, I believe that you wanted to tell us a little bit about Asterix and Obliques and why on earth I'm holding up this book all the way in London. So do you maybe want to give us, the audience, a little bit of insight into why I have one of these?
Yeah, and very early on in the book, I realized I wanted to illustrate one of the core problems we have when we sell to customers. And to quote Don Packett, my old business partner, in the foreword of the book, the first line he writes is, there are 2 stories in sales, yours and those that matter. And the biggest mistake people make is that they think that we've been told a lot that we should get into storytelling. And so everyone arrives and they all come to us and say, hey, I've got a great story to tell. Help us tell our customers. And a missing link, that's theoretically what we do. But our first job is to say, well, hold on a second. You don't want, you're not the hero of the story here. And to illustrate this, I always use the metaphor or the story of Asterix and Obliques. And I like to actually start, because they all read the start the same thing. The year is 50 BC. Gaul is entirely occupied. You know that story. Every single Asterix and Obliques book starts this way. And the reason I like to talk about this is if you think about the story of Asterix and Obliques, and for those of you who don't know, little dude in a small little village in Gaul, the Romans come and try and take over the village. He's not particularly strong himself. Luckily, there's a druid called Getafix who makes these cool potions. These potions that if you drink them, you become super strong. Asterix goes out, beats the crap out of the Romans, and, happily ever after. Now, here's the problem, though, is you run the risk of thinking, well, hold on a second. Who's the real hero here? Because Getafix made the potion. Without the potion, there's no way Asterix would have won. And, of course, you, in this story, if you're selling something, you're never Asterix. You're never the hero. You're always Getafix. And if you were to ask Getafix who's the hero, he would have said Asterix is the hero because Asterix is always the hero. And the biggest thing that we need our customers to understand is they need to stop trying to be the hero in their sales efforts. They need to start building up the journey and the quest of the actual hero as much as possible, and then simply say, hey, these Romans, they're intimidating. There's a big problem with this, but if you win, you get something wonderful. And on the back of that, there we have a tool that can help you. And that became the entire premise of the book and the core idea of the book. And that's part of the reason why we have these here today. The other part is we wanted to do a book giveaway, and I don't want to give you this. If I can't convince you enough to want to buy this at the end of today, then that's a problem. So I bought a more expensive book, and we bought 10 copies of these, and we're going to be giving away. This is the new Asterix and Obliques, perfect for a nice long sit on the toilet. So we're going to be giving away 10 copies of this. Good fun holiday reading.
So today we're giving away 10 copies to anybody in the audience who asks us one of our favorite questions, who has a comment that makes us laugh, anything that sparks Rich and my interest. So please engage with us in the chat on your right. Ask us a question. We will answer your questions. Right now, I haven't seen any, but you are being very engaged. So that's awesome. Please, as we go, ask us more questions. So Rich, I went through and obviously picked up tons and tons of little pieces of value. There's a lot of stuff in here. You're a master of writing microscripts that people can remember. The thing that caught me early on in the book was the Story Seller Manifesto. I don't want you to give us the whole manifesto because it's quite long, but I want you to give us context on what it is and why you came up with it and why you think it's important to have a manifesto of any kind and why you have this one.
It's very, very important to understand, at least in our business, the reason we sell. I think selling has got a bad rap. It's very, very frustrating for me that salespeople feel the need to say, what do you do? Oh, I'm in business development. I'm in account management. Oh, I don't understand why we need euphemisms for the word salesman. I mean, sales should be a point of such high regard and respect, because I can promise you there are very few problems in our business that wouldn't be fixed by better sales. Now, this is the most important part of this. Better sales isn't the same as more sales. To quote another mutual friend of ours, Howard Mann, he talks about the fewer better principle. And this new book is called Fewer Better. I think it's at fewerbetter.com. You can definitely check it out. But the fewer better principle is actually you probably need fewer better clients, right? You need fewer better products. And I think you need to make fewer better sales. It's not just about selling more of the same over and over again. There is cases if you're a volume business where that makes sense. But for us, it's about understanding why are we selling? And the reason we sell is we only ever sell if we think we can solve a meaningful problem our customer has. So we're not interested in selling something for the sake of selling. We have a manifesto in our business that defines the parameters under which we'd be excited to make a sale. Now, we don't say this because we're not trying to make money. Our customers know we're trying to make money. However, our job is to make sure that we leave more value in the room than the customer feels they paid for. If we can leave every interaction like that, then we win. We're also selling our customers a story about our role in their business and in the quests of what they're trying to achieve. And so by sitting down as sales professionals and writing, why do we sell? Answering the question, if the answer to that question for you is simply to make money, I don't think you're going to motivate the right type of salespeople in your business, and I don't think you're going to motivate the right type of thinking. So I want to go to war with that idea, and I actually want to go to war with the world on the idea that sales is crass. Sales is beautiful. When well executed, both parties leave feeling like they've won.
Yeah, I think the key thing there is bad sales are bad. Good sales
Yeah.
is an art form. And I mean, the fewer better thing really actually triggered me while I was reading it, because some of the advice I give to young startup entrepreneurs is you don't have a sales problem, you have a not selling enough problem. And for most first-time entrepreneurs, they're like, oh, I've made 2 cold calls, that's enough. And I'm like, no, shut up, make more sales. And this really triggered me because the truth is you need a combination of volume and quality. And I mean, volume relative to your own business, right? Like you can't make 1 sale a month and hope that your business scales. But if you're selling to the right customer and you make the best sale possible, your argument is fewer, better.
Right. And I would say that instead of making 100 calls to 100 different client archetypes, what we should do is have fewer, better client archetypes. And then when we're still making those 100 calls, we're making those 100 calls to only the types of customers that we want to deal with. And I think that's better, or a better mindset. And I feel that's what Howard means. He's not saying don't do the work. He's saying the effort, the units of work that you're doing, which should be, the correct amount of units of work, should be applied to fewer, better things.
100% agree. We have had a stream of questions, so I'm going to pick one now from Craig
People
Morrison.
really want that Asterix.
Yeah, dude, we've got way more than 10 questions already.
If we said we're giving away a copy of my book, and we can chat later about why I would want to do that, we would have had a lot less questions. People are like, shit, yeah, Asterix for the win.
They're like, holy crap, I'm 37. I haven't read Asterix in 20 years. Okay. So from Craig Morrison, how does one start a story without being manipulative or obvious about what it is that you're doing? And I kind of like that. The word manipulative is quite a frequently associated word with sales. They're trying to manipulate me into parting with my money.
Well, it depends on your intent. So I go into every meeting and I start that discussion the same way. So Craig, if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to land what a dragon is in the context of this book first, so the next bit makes a bit of sense. The reason I like the metaphor of the dragon, and the book is called Here Be Dragons, because the most important part of the story, I used to get caught up in this idea of the hero and the hero's journey, and we talk about these things. The hero is actually quite unimportant. Luke Skywalker isn't interesting until Darth Vader arrives in the picture. Otherwise, he's just some farmer in a desert land, right? Harry Potter isn't interesting until Voldemort. All right, Katniss Everdeen, you get the idea. So it is the dragon that makes the story interesting. And if the story's not interesting, they won't need you. So that's the first point. The other reason why I like the term dragon and the history of it, and the name of the book comes from Here Be Dragons, Hic sunt dracones, which is what used to appear in those old maps. And the idea was that when explorers were exploring, they wanted to find new lands. And they would mark off the maps with a little sea serpent or a dragon, because we all knew dragons existed. We just didn't know where they were. So that space where we've not yet discovered must be where the dragons are. So here be dragons. And the idea was that the dragon represented both an opportunity and a threat. It was a threat because dragons could be dangerous, but it was an opportunity because, by discovering this new land, or in the fairy tale dragon sense, the dragon is protecting the treasure. So if I can position a dragon with you, that represents both what is standing in the way of you, or what is a threat for your business, or what is standing in the way of between you and your potential. And so that is the sense of the dragon. Now, with that in mind, if my job is to say that I believe that I think sales is a cooperative game, and I'm trying to help my customer solve a problem that I think they genuinely have, and we fundamentally believe that people have a presentation problem that's making them ineffective at persuading people. With that in mind, I want to understand the problem itself the way they see it. So what I do is I open up most meetings with what I refer to as the dragon hunter question. I'll start a meeting. I'll be, hey, Craig, great to see you. Thanks so much for taking the time today. It's wonderful. This is Nic, my associate. Let me take you through how the meeting would run. I would explain to them how the meeting would run. And then I would say to them, now, if that makes sense to you, do you agree with this? They say yes. And I'll always say to them at the end of the meeting, we're going to decide if we're going to do business together today. Because I want them to understand that, I'm being 100% honest. I'm not being manipulative. I'm saying that at the end of the meeting, I want us to decide if I'm going to sell you something. Does that sound good? They agree. Now what happens is the game parameters have been set. Like we all understand that we're playing a game in which at the end of this thing, we're going to decide if we're doing business. Then I say to them, now, before we get started here today, I'm just a little bit curious. Nobody needs to jump onto another Zoom call. Like there's no one in the world that needs this right now in their life. So I'm very curious, why was this the right time for you to take this call? And then they'll tell you. And that's where the magic happens. Because when you ask them, humans are funny things. Nobody wants to turn around and say, oh, I read one of your books and I wanted to jump onto a Zoom call. Even if that was the case, they won't say that. They've got to give themselves a rational argument. Now, we make decisions with our emotional self, and then we justify them with our rational self. In this instance, they want to give you a rational argument. So they might say something like, yes, we're doing a really big presentation to our analysts in our industry. If we don't get this right, our share price might be impacted. And then I ask more about that. Oh, what does that mean? What would be the impact if this doesn't work well? Or what happens if you hit it out the park? Like, what is in it for you if you do an amazing job? So I get them both to render the dragon and to render the treasure. And then I've got to do is just create a divide between those two. And if I can then get to the point where I put us in between it, we are having a conversation. Long answer to a short question, but thank you.
No, there's so much value in that. The first thing that I think I like to observe about the book and your method is that most people shy away from the idea of selling because they think of cold calling, hard sales, awkward, pushing something, bait and switch. And what you're trying to help people see with this book is if you actually tell a good story, people want to listen to you and they want to solve their problems and they want you to solve their problems for them. And in meetings that are sales meetings, they're there to do business with you. It's not a trick. It's a business meeting. Like, you've got to be honest about that.
Right. But they're playing their cards close to the chest because that's what we've been taught to do. And we allow them, as sales professionals, we allow them to play their cards close to the chest because we don't ask them. So we try to maneuver around to figure out what's going on. But the first sign of resistance I'll usually get when I drop the Dragon Hunter, why was this the right time for us to have this conversation, is they'll say, well, you emailed me. And I said, yes, but I'm sure you don't answer every single email by booking a meeting. This is your time. I'm curious again, what about my mail that I sent you sparked your interest? Even if it was just one line, what sparked your interest to make you think that this was a call worth having? And they'll say, it's quite funny. When you said about the idea, I specifically like the idea when you mentioned that you guys do coaching. I thought you were just, made presentations. And I say, oh, that's interesting. So it was the coaching side. Are you worried about coaching for yourself or for other people in your organization? And they'll say, no, for myself. And then I'll say, well, who's your favorite presenter? And they'll say, Malcolm Gladwell. So what do you rate them? And they'll say, oh, he's a 9. And I said, cool. On that scale, what do you rate yourself? And I'll say, well, maybe a 5 or a 6. And by the way, it's always important. If there's one thing, anytime you're asking somebody to rate themselves, to try and you need to create the parameters of the scale. So on the scale of you to Malcolm Gladwell, they can't say they're an 8. But if they're measuring themselves against the people in their business and they're the best presenter there, they might think they are. Dunning-Kruger effect. So once we've got that, then I'll say, cool. Out of interest, if you were a 6 or 7, how different do you think your career would be? If you were better at persuading, how different do you think your career could have been? Can you track areas? And then again, they'll tell us. And I'll say, now what's coming up now in which being a 6 or 7 would give you an unfair advantage? And then they'll tell me that, and I'll say, and what's at stake? And then we'll go through from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such simple, obvious stuff when you say it out loud. And that is, again, why I like this book so much, is because you look at it and you go, yeah, man, now that you've said that out loud, obviously that's how this should work. And one of the things, just highlighting more on from Craig's question, is the word intent you used early on. And I think that's so key. It's not manipulative. If you 100% believe in your solution and you absolutely believe you can help the customer's problem, then there's no manipulation. You're telling them a story to make their business better and give them a solution you have. But that intent does matter.
Now, the book has tools in it that I'm going to ask you to employ, like anchoring and presupposition and various tools that I want to give you that could absolutely be a force for evil. But just because the ability to persuade other humans and to be eloquent communicators can be used by evil geniuses, this book was basically written for people who want to slay dragons, not for the dragons themselves. And so I'm kind of working under the basic intent that we want to sell, but we want to sell to the right people. And that's why I led with the manifesto first. But there absolutely are techniques like anchoring that we cover later on in the book that for sure could be used to, I'm trying to manipulate your perceptions of price. But I'm doing it because I do fundamentally believe that if you hire us for the right product set, we're going to make you a better human.
Yeah, I'm going to pull out another question now from Tabo Limema. The question is, and I'm going to tweak it a little bit, but is training or experience more important in being an effective storyteller or story seller? And I think the book will suggest, read this and you can be trained to be a better story seller. But is there a tipping point where some people are just never going to be good story sellers?
Right. Well, let's take this for anything. This is a rule for life. So let's consider typing. If we say typing, there's a problem. You can become technically efficient. Joshua Foer coined a phrase that I love. He calls it the OK plateau. So years ago, I couldn't type at all. I couldn't find my way around a keyboard. And then I started typing. And quite quickly, I got to the point where, okay, I can hold my own. I'm not embarrassing myself, but I'm certainly not brilliant. And autocorrect and spell check and things fill in the gaps. Now, I've done my 10,000 hours of typing as pretty much everybody on this. I'm 47 years old. Pretty much everybody in my age bracket has done their 10,000 hours of typing. And yet, I'm still shit. Because I require the training to push me off the OK plateau to get better. So one of the things that people come to me all the time about presenting, and I say to them, they'll hire us for a presentation. I'll say, do you need some training? They'll be like, my boy, I've been training since before you were born. I've been presenting since before you were born. And I always want to say to them, but yet you're still shit. But what I do say to them, I said, listen, in fairness, I've been typing for 30 years, but I'm not great at it. I want to know if you think being better at something is worth the effort. So I think both elements are important, but we need to train the right habit and behavior in terms of story selling. And just because we've been in sales for years and years, Nic knows I spend an hour every single morning reading books that are only about my profession. Not business books, not books on pricing strategy. That is a different conversation. I read my competitors' books every single morning from 9 to 10. It's called Craft Hour because I'm trying to learn new things in my craft. I've been a professional speaker for 18 years and I've owned a presentation company for just under 25 years. And I'm still trying to learn because otherwise my experience is just repeating bad or mediocre habits and I'm not excelling in my craft. So I think we need to train ourselves up to a level, get better. And then the most important job is to check your ego and find better coaches. Once you have reached the point where you have got to the point where in sales or in story selling or in presentation or in anything, where you feel like, hey, I've learned everything that coach has taught me, get a new coach. If your ego won't allow you to do that, then you're going to be stuck on the OK plateau. It might be a high plateau, but it's still a plateau. And very quickly, you'll get frustrated with yourself and you'll feel unmotivated.
Yeah, and to pick up from that, I think that one of the ways, if you can't find a mentor or get a good coach, is to buy a book like this to practice with somebody who's been practicing for 25 years. Like, not to be funny. Yeah, I mean, but look, we're here for a book launch, so let's punt the book. The point of this is, I mean, I've been telling stories since I was 7 years old. I've been writing since that age, but I read this and I made pages of notes on how to improve the things that I've been doing so long. And that reminds me of something else, this 10,000 hour rule that Malcolm Gladwell popularized, which actually has been misused. What Rich is talking about sums this up. It's 10,000 intentional hours of practice, not 10,000 random hours doing some random shit. You have to intentionally be practicing something specific. And that's what Rich is talking about. You're practicing with intent, not just randomly telling stories for 30 hours or 30,000 hours, right? It's that actual intent to get better. And this book will make you a better storyteller because there are mechanics in here that I didn't even know. And I've been telling stories and presenting and selling for 15 years. So there is deep value in finding things that edify you. And added to that, the thing I want to raise to people is input is more important than output. And if you change your input, you will change your output. If you've been selling for 20 years and you think you know everything, read this book and see maybe your output will change because you've read something new and different. Super key. Rich, before you add to that, I'm going to just pop another question in here. This is more of a personal one from Rosalie McCartney. Rich, a mark of your writing and videos is that you cut through the bullshit. What or who has influenced you to be this way?
I have many people have influenced me throughout the years. I would suggest that the very first person, if I go back, if I look at the genesis, ground zero for my business career, it was a gentleman by the name of Offer Lapid. Offer was my boss at a company called Gearhouse. He was called Lighting Unlimited when I started. It became Gearhouse. We grew very, very quickly. And Offer didn't mind. You either liked him or you didn't like him. We had a client once come in the door. They were holding a rave that night. And they came in the door and they were flirting with a receptionist, Pearl. And Offer walked past, and he was in shorts and a t-shirt. He doesn't look like much at the time. He didn't take himself very seriously. He took the work he did very seriously. And he saw this guy leaning over the reception desk like this. And he walked up and said, Habibi, can I help you? And the guy looked at him, it was like this 25-year-old rave promoter. And it was like, I'm fine. Thank you so much. I'm just busy having a discussion with this lady over here, please. And then did one of those, sorry, where were we? So anyway, and then Offer was like, I'm sorry, my friend. I'm asking you, can I help you with something? And he was like, no. I said, I'm fine. Thank you very much. And Offer picked him up and said, who the fuck do you think you are? I grabbed him and threw him out. I'm a paying customer of this business. And Offer, like when he got angry, he'd be spitting at me, Brian, he shouted to the accountant, bring this dipshit's check. And he threw the check at the guy. He went out. The guy wrote a letter of apology to Offer. You will treat my staff with respect or we will not take your money. And that's how Offer was. I was once having a meeting with Prime Media years and years ago. So again, I would have been 22 years old. And Offer saw me having a meeting with this guy in a suit, and he thought he was taking his life too seriously or taking the whole thing too seriously. And so he took off his pants and he just had his underwear and he crawled around the office and snuck up behind me and started pulling faces at the guy. The guy had no idea who this guy was. That's just who he was. And of course, by the time you meet him, Offer was a great polarizing person. And he made me understand the principle that I wrote about in Legacide of best versus favorite. Offer was many people's favorite person to deal with. And in fact, very few people who worked with him will not consider him his core influence. But Offer was totally okay to be other people's worst. He didn't mind. If you didn't like him, that's okay. That's fine. But he didn't trade in the middle. And I'd like to think that while I think now that it's so ingrained in me that I don't sit there and think, what would Offer do? I would like to think that I'm holding true the basis of authenticity and not giving a shit about being in the middle and polarizing ruthlessly people and doing business with people who you want to like, that I would like to feel that translates into my writing, into my thinking, into my speaking, and indeed into me as an employer and a business owner.
Yeah, I think it does translate into everything you write and put out online. And to be honest, I think this is the best book you've written, and it translates directly into this book. Like, it really resonates, that like, I don't care feeling. I'm going to find the best story and find the best customer.
I'm glad you think it's the best book I've written, because this is the point I want to call you out on, because you said you read the book twice now. I want to know, are you going to give me a 4-star review like you did on Legacide? Do you know Nic is one of the only, there's like a bunch of 5-star reviews on Goodreads, and there's one 4-star review. And this Nic, he's like, you're my friend. I'm not giving you an extra star. And like, I look at the ratings, because I sit and I look, and I just go down this Nic's lonely 4-star. He's like, bro, try harder. And in fairness, he does. He pushes me. Nic pushes me all the time and calls my bullshit.
Let me tell you something.
Everything.
When I give this book a 5-star, will it mean more because I gave the last one 4?
Yes, it will.
Yeah. There you go.
For sure.
Yeah, there you go.
But I want to force you. I want to sit and read Legacide to you, page by page, in my voice. I want to be like, bro, like, what are you missing here? This is good shit. Well, I'm writing the second edition for the sole purpose of earning that star back from you, Nic. That's my mission. It's my dragon.
Deal. I'm a hard taskmaster. Okay, we've got more really good questions that I think take us down the book that I'm not even going to ask you some of mine because they give too much of the book away. Question from Tinswalo Kamalo. Does the book show or advise on a relevant dragon that needs to be killed to enable progress in all areas of someone's business?
What it does is it gives you the tools for which to define dragons. So that's an important thing. I don't think there is a one size fits all. I think understanding the problems that our customers have, and remember, this is a book about persuading other people. So what problems exist in their world, and it helps you get past the biggest barrier, which is the dragon they tell you they have, which isn't always right. People will often come to us and they'll say to us, "Hey, we're bad at presenting. Our presentations are terrible. We need more slides." And their belief is that their slides, I mean, it's so shocking. I've seen them present those slides. The slide is the least of their worries. Their slide is the big part of the problem. Now, for me, I give you the tools for getting to the heart of the problem so you can see, because for some people, there may be great presenters that really do have terrible slides. For some people, I'll say, you know what, you're the edge case. You're absolutely right. Your slides are not doing you any favors. Let's see how we can help you there. But for most people, we realize that there's that quote, they think they want a 3/4 inch drill bit, but what they actually want is a 3/4 inch hole. But even that, they don't want a hole. They want to hang a picture or something on a wall. So our job is to get to the source of the problem. If you and your clients can simultaneously, or your conversation partner can simultaneously have that, you know what, you're right. You're actually right. That is actually the real problem we're solving. Moment together. If you can help them get there, you've already won. If you can help them realize, you know, I hadn't thought about it that way. Because the best part is everybody else that maybe is selling to this customer is selling what they're trying to facilitate the buy for them. They're trying to just give them what they wanted. So it becomes, instead of being a 5-horse race, what it becomes is a 2-horse race. You know, servicing the dragon that you've now put in front of the client, and the best of the other 4. And that's why I say job number 2 is to help your clients slay the dragon. You can only do that once you've done job number 1, and that is to make sure that they see it, and they see the right one, and they see it properly. Now, what the book does is give you the tools and the questions that you can ask in order to get that. What it doesn't do is give you the one-size-fits-all dragon that exists.
I think even adding to that, if you are looking for a one-size-fits-all solution, you're misunderstanding the role of sales in your company. There isn't one. You need to find the right customer, the right problem, the right solution. And that's what you meant earlier by fewer better, right? Is it's not selling everything to everyone all the time. If everybody is your target audience, nobody is your target audience. And that's a problem. Which actually takes me to Brad's question. Brad Shawkins, who we both know. Hey, Brad.
Hey, Brad.
Rich,
looking forward to a curry.
And we're not sending you a book, Brad. Sorry, no Asterix for you. I'm just kidding.
Rude.
I'm just kidding. Rich, how do we narrow down the customer archetype? Often we say everyone is our customer, and I hear that all the time too, and I'm sure you do, especially with your big corporate clients. Does the book cover narrowing down who you should be selling to?
Yes, and it does it in different areas. It talks a little bit about maybe your broad customer, so your customer archetype broadly, but also talks about, even let's say you said, well, our customer is big listed insurance companies. It still tries to help you figure out who you want to speak to within those businesses. We talk about the Ninas, the Lilas, and the Demis. The Ninas have no influence and no authority. The Lilas have low influence and low authority, and the Demis have the desire, the energy, the money, and the influence. Once we figure out who the demi is for the product you're trying to do, sometimes you have to sell to other people along the chain. So we talk about 2 different types of hero. There's the champion and there's the gatekeeper. And the way that you communicate to a gatekeeper, their mandate is slightly different. The dragon is, if I send, the dragon for them is, if I send somebody through to meet with this person and they do a terrible job, they embarrass me. But the treasure is, if I find a resource that I bring into this business that levels up this business and impacts this business's share price, I look amazing. So the question I always want you to ask about any customer is, what would get them promoted and what would get them fired? That's very different to what is their KPI. Their KPI is, what are the table stakes that would mean that they've done their job okay. And start thinking about those 2 things, and that will change that. However, to go kind of deeper into Brad's question, I do think we need to be introspective about the products that we sell. So one of the big problems at Missing Link is we often get product bloat. We service a customer once, we create something quite unique that worked for them, and then we realize, hey, we could sell this more often, and we create that product and we sell it there to other people. One of the ways to do that is to turn around and say, when we are at, now this maybe works more for a consulting or service-oriented business, you know, maybe differently to a product business, but possibly not. When we are doing our best work, the jobs we're the most proud of, and the jobs that are basically helping us, you know, with the right margin and do the right things, what are those jobs? And then you look at those and you say, well, when we're doing this type of work, then you look at that and you say, okay, so when we're doing this type of work, we're at our best. Great. What types of customers in the world need this type of work specifically? And why do they do it? And these are people who would be fired or promoted if we could help them in this regard. And then we tackle them. And we know exactly what to say to them because it's a narrower group. But if you have 5 products, if you have 10 products and 1,000 people, it becomes very, very hard to figure out which one we're going for. So look internally first and say, when we're doing our best work, what are we doing? And then start with that and then go and find those customers. And by the way, that could also be when we're doing the work that fulfills us the most. We enjoy making nice slides, but we love creating great narratives.
Yeah, awesome. That's such a good answer to a very common question. Okay, so there are still lots of questions, so I'm just going to keep pushing on. This one is from Llewellyn Benjamin. Is there an order of hierarchy in which you identify and start slaying dragons? Are some more fiery than others? Like, how do you prioritize this as a salesperson?
Right. So one of the great tools that you're going to have is compelling events. So you have different types of compelling urgencies, basically. So you have a fire-breathing dragon that is way over in the towns next to you that is breathing and doing value there, and you figure it's going to get bored eventually and come to you. That's less exciting than one that's burning down buildings in your village already. We can lose the metaphor. If you have a very real compelling event coming up, for those of you who are old enough, you'll remember Y2K. Y2K was a very compelling dragon that needed to be solved straight away. If you want the most compelling dragon that all of us have seen in our career, is figuring out how to work from home in a 2-week period. Relatively easy for a small business like me, very difficult for a big business like a bank who has a whole bunch of safety protocols they have to figure out. And yet they did. So the question is, where is there urgency in a deadline? Now, if you go to a big customer and you're trying to sell a big end year problem for them, the ultimate problem, you want to sell them the dragon that their conferences aren't fantastic and you can help them, say, in missing link terms. That might be something that's a big issue that we can sell later, but maybe there's something we can help them with that's more immediate. And so it might be a financial results presentation or something like that. So we want to go in and say, where do we get most immediate access to the highest profile people where urgency is big? And for example, an organization presenting their financials, that is a relatively big ticket item. So if we can get in there, win them over with that, there's urgency, there's a very, very big high dragon. Then the lower dragon thing, which is like their company conference, internal, things like this, but is actually a bigger ticket item for us, well, then we work towards there. But if we went straight for that, they may still be trading in the novelty realm there because there is a lot of that, and we wouldn't have got a good enough bite. So we want to go to the places where we can convince them. And you'll note that I didn't say get in low and go maybe straight to a lower department and sell them a small little thing, a single thing. No. We still want to get in at the top. And we want to do big, meaningful work because it's easier to trickle down inside an organization than it is to climb and claw your way up. I think a lot of people think, hey, let's get in the door at the bottom and claw our way up. No. Then you just get used for the bottom stuff. People don't go for their big anniversary dinners to the same place they go for their local weekly pizza. So you want to be a event of significance from the start. And in the book, I talked to you quite a bit about compelling events.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the key thing for me there is this is not a spray and pray tactic. This is sniping. It's specific. It's calculated. Sales is not just about, let's see what sticks. Like, you've got to have a plan before you go and tell people a story and sell them the specific solution you have. Do you want to add to that?
No, I want to have a wee sip of coffee.
A little wee sip of coffee. Okay, question from Marianne Lansfield. And I think you and I cover this one quite a lot, so I want to hear it out loud, is why is sales still a swear word in so many organizations if it's such a crucial part? Like, why are so many people like, oh, no, I'm not a salesman. No, thank you.
Well, I'd love to hear your take on this, because I think I somewhat referred to this at the beginning, but I would love to hear your take and then build on that.
I think that for me, the one of the main problems we have is that sales becomes a way to make money. It isn't the way you find your customers, the way you discover your market. We haven't glorified it because it's just a function of making money, when actually it's a much bigger part of a business. It's a function of discovering problems, giving feedback into your tech team, evolving your product. So I think we've, over time, just turned it into call centers that spam people, political parties who never stop with stuff trying to get you to do things. And then it's like, oh, no, thank you. I don't want to take your sales call. When actually the right sales call, I'm happy to listen to.
Yeah, I think we have a collective non-problem here, that we group all sales into this. So if we don't like these one or two things, we see all sales as bad. But I think like almost everybody here must have, like, if you're on this call right now, it's because we sold you on what there was something on offer. We've asked you to give up your lunchtime or your time to come and join us today. That's a big ask. That's you're not getting this time back. So you've given it to us. And so there was a sale that was done there. My hope is that you feel that the value that you get today was better than than the time you spent. Now, you were still sold, but it's not bad. I think there were so many shitty sales practices that were taught in the early heydays of sales, and people aren't willing to let go. Again, my first book, Legacide, is about legacy thinking. People aren't willing to let go of their old ideas around this. This was actually an interesting thing. I posted yesterday about Kindle versus books. Where do people think? And the number one argument for people for reading books is they like the smell. I mean, I don't know. That's not how I read, but each to their own. I don't judge. But a lot of people are just not willing to. They've so caught up in this is what my identity is. This is my belief system. And one of our belief systems is sales is shitty and sales is embarrassing. And by the way, the other thing is that it's because we're not pushing our kids to go into sales. You can make a lot of money in sales. And in fact, most entrepreneurs who are successful is because they can also sell. And it's a skill that we're not teaching at school. Do you know you cannot get a university degree? Mark Keating from Sales Guru talks about this a lot. His biggest frustration, there's no professional degree in sales in this country. How is this not? Very few around the world. How is this not a thing? So we're not legitimizing one of the most important things in our business. And I will tell you this, I'm a member of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and I can categorically tell you that the number one complaint that people have in their business that they talk about is, how do we get and manage great high-performing salespeople? Finding, recruiting, keeping, and managing, a different skill set altogether, great salespeople. And the reason that we're not owning it is because none of us are encouraging our children to go and go into sales. And like, if your kid's in sales, you're like, oh, that's when we say he's in the real estate game.
Shame, he's in sales.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got to change this narrative.
Yeah, we do. I agree with that, but we have 13 minutes and we're not going to change the narrative in this conversation. So let's move on. Okay, so next question is from Dennis Hammer. And I do think this is quite a pertinent question now, post-COVID or during COVID, kind of. How do you overcome the dragon of price resistance?
By the time we get to price. So I think one of the problems is price is happening so early in a conversation. By the time we get to price, if we've positioned the opportunity and threat well enough, the dragon and the treasure, then price is a foregone conclusion. So in the book, I talk about the example of one I've been using a bit today, a financial results presentation. So let's say you came to me and said, hey, I want a presentation. And I said to you, cool, it's going to be about 150 to 250,000 Rand. You would be like, whoa, bro, this is ridiculous. Like, that's far too much money. And sorry, I just want to comment. Martin Hatting in the chat mentioned that this is very applicable to marketing. I think it absolutely is, but when you get into the nitty gritty of these price style discussions is where it comes down to the sales level. But of course, the broad principles are the same. I would say the Here Be Dragons for marketing would be a book like Donald Miller's book, The Story Brand. And, he does that. He talks practically about marketing. We want to talk about sales. Now, once you get in there, so if a client came to me for this financial results, if I say to them something like, so what would be the cost out of interest if we fail to get this right? So one of the questions I always ask my customers, and I talk about this in the book, if at the end of our engagement, you hire us, and if at the end of our engagement, we do not manage to achieve X, we have failed. What is that, and what does it cost your business? So if I do not get your presenters to 2 points higher, what is the impact? Or if we fail to get this right and your presenters are bad on the day, what does that do to your share price? And they tell me. And how much is that worth to the organization? And they'll tell me. And they'll give you a big amount because it's a big amount. So they'll say millions. Like literally, like I say millions, like tens of millions. And I say, okay, cool, that makes sense. Now, out of interest, if on the flip side, I actually managed to get each of your presenters and maybe your CEO specifically or your CFO just 2 points better. So we get them from a 5 to a 7. if I can give you that edge when you're presenting on the day, or as an eloquent persuader for the analysts in the room, how does that positively impact your share price? Then they give me that number. So that number might be just, again, 10 million Rand the other way. I said, okay, cool. So if I take the scale we're talking about here, we're talking about 10 million one way and 10 million the other way. We're having a 20 million Rand discussion. Does that sound reasonable? Yes. Cool. Okay, great. I've now set a high anchor of 10 million and, or a low anchor of a loss, however you do it. When I turn around and say, okay, cool, I'm fairly certain that, for a fraction of that amount, we're going to be able to help you out here today. And when I then turn around and say, I believe all in for this thing, the way we're covering it, and I've gone through it, I think we can help you save this dragon for about 250,000 Rand. And then I'll say to them, if I only manage to achieve 10%, less than 10% on the objective that you've given us, based on your expectations today, you'll have received a return of investment on this. Then price is no longer a factor. Price should not be a factor if value is understood. If value is not understood, then it's too early to talk about price. The only caveat to this, or the counter argument to this, and I again do kind of cover this, is when price is already known. So if we're talking about a car and you know that this car already costs 180,000 Rand, well, then the price discussion isn't about the car. The price discussion is actually about the extras and the other things. So then it's a different discussion. But for most of us, we need to show value, demonstrate value before we reveal the price. If you demonstrate your value and the price still feels expensive, then, my friend, you need to figure out your pricing.
So if you do buy the book and read the book, you can figure out one of our friends, Rick Webb, managed to sell Rich a car in the most interesting and unusual way, which I will not tell you about. Go buy the book. Okay, 2 questions, 9 minutes, shorter answers, please. The question from Peter DeVetz. People buy from people, and yes, stories make it possible. What is your best advice in the life of COVID, where we can't have face-to-face meetings or events, to be best connected with new contacts and grow your network?
First of all, hey, Peter. I think the first thing is to realize that we need to stop seeing presenting online as a bug, and we need to start seeing it as a feature. We need to understand that the geographical handcuffs have been broken and that we're now able to communicate with people all over the world. Nic moved overseas earlier this year, and we've maintained our friendship perfectly because we've actually just put in our diary a standing meeting where we catch up every Friday and we chat. And we've made sure we make that happen. There are certain things, though, that I think we have to get better at. And I do think bad camera setups, apologizing, keeping your cameras off in meetings and things because you didn't get ready properly, these are all barriers and create distance. So I think we need to become better. One of the other little things, and I don't know if this is related to what you say, but it's one of the observations I realized. Before, in a meeting, I did my rapport building at the beginning. So if we had an hour-long meeting, I would arrive and I would be talking shit with the client, joking, laughing, building rapport, building this. Then I would start asking questions 15 minutes in. Then we get to the stuff, and then we would end with the meeting there. Now I jump in much, much quicker. I get to the heart of the problem earlier, and I do my rapport building more closer to the end of the meeting. Once we know they're on the hook and we're doing it, then I start joking and laughing and having a bit more fun, saying to them, hey, look at me, I'm a potato, or like, hey, let's talk about price and stuff. Then we start doing those things. I know, I love being a potato. Like, not enough people are a potato nowadays. Hey, look at me. And I do the rapport building later. The other thing is, I have more shorter meetings with people instead of longer meetings. So I'm actually having more interactions with people quicker than I would have done in the past. And that's making it a lot, you're getting these small little in. So I might say, this is great. Can I get 15 minutes in your diary the day after tomorrow after I sent you the proposal to take it through? Then I take them through. And I said, should we meet again for 15 minutes on Monday to chat, to go through any of your concerns? Great. And then we do that. Then we've had 3 meetings. By then we're like, we're close and we've built relationships.
Yeah, I mean, Rich, you know that I've been trying hard to pioneer over the last 6 months the 10-minute sales pitch. Like, if you can't do a 10-minute pitch to get people to have you another meeting and sell, then you shouldn't be meeting this person anyways. Like, you should be able to give value in 10 minutes, and online allows you to do that. Whereas before, in person, you want to come to my office for a 10-minute meeting. I'm sorry, I don't understand that. That's crazy. Now you've got so much more option than an hour-long meeting.
One other thing I want to add to Peter's question, and it goes back to Howard Mann's idea, was the fewer better principle. I don't know if any of you have found this, but before COVID, I would take every lunch meeting that I was offered. And I would, I was so used to driving and leaving home and doing these things, I would just say yes to everything. I'm definitely having fewer better closer relationships. So some relationships may not be evolving in the same way that they are because I'm choosing to invest more time in a smaller group of people. That could be as a result of COVID, or it could be as a result of me getting older. But I've definitely found that from a business point of view, I've been using LinkedIn a ton more. Like, wow, that was a bit of a sleeping giant for me that only really did I understand its power last year. But for personal networking and relationships, I've probably been doing less.
Definitely.
I feel like we messed that one up, Nic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on. Go follow Rich on LinkedIn. Posts a lot of really interesting, specific content around presentations and story selling and all that stuff. Go find him right now. And then, Rich, last question, which I think is a good one to end off with, from Bronwyn Langenhoven. How do you recollect or reassess yourself after a deal that you sold your best story failed?
Obviously, the most important thing for us is to make sure that we understand why it failed. And again, because we're not going to get everything right. There's a perfect set of circumstances that we position, and we write the narrative in front of the customer. But the truth is that we're writing the story that we think is going to unfold. And that's what we're trying to position it. But we don't know how anything is going to happen. The most important thing for me is to make sure that the customer understands that there is how we feel about it, and that we are committed to solving their problem as a whole. And I talk in the book about a principle that I learned about the 2 tokens. And I believe that when there is a problem in service, there are only 2 tokens between you and your customer. And whatever token you take, they're going to take the other one. And on one token is written, it's not a big deal. And in the other token is written, it's the end of the world. And if something goes wrong in your business, if you take the it's not a big deal token, like, oh, listen, you guys showed up late. This is fine. Everything worked. Yes, it wasn't great. Sure, some of the slides didn't work, but was that really a big deal? Then the client's taking the other one. They're like, that was the biggest deal. Yes, how dare you? This is terrible. If on the other hand, I turn around and say, guys, I'm absolutely horrified. I know there was technical issues that were out of our control, but just the fact that you put all this work in and this didn't work the way we wanted to work, I feel absolutely humiliated. I actually feel terrible because that's not what I told you in the beginning. I feel mortified. How can we possibly? And then halfway through that, the client's saying, listen, Rich, don't be sick. It's not a big deal. It's okay. Let's just work on it. So, but we are committed to make sure that you do better next time. Now, again, you get some asshole clients, and sometimes we're the asshole, and sometimes we make mistakes, and relationships are severed, and that's really, really terrible. But if the dragon slays your customer in any way, means, or form, and you couldn't help them, you always have to take the it's the end of the world token. You've got to act, and your salespeople and your professionals have to act like that. Give them a chance to reach for the other one. It's very, very rare in my experience that you're busy saying, this is horrific, this is horrific, this is horrific, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And the client is like, yes, you are. You're totally wrong. You're an asshole. And they may say it at the beginning for a little bit until eventually they run out of patience, or I do. And by the way, Missing Link used to have a sign on our door outside, and it was very clear, and it said, no assholes allowed, clients or staff. And there is a point where I will turn around and simply say, listen, I've apologized enough, but I'm not going to eat your shit any more than this. Go and work with another company. And that's the beautiful thing about knowing that the reason we sell is because it's a symbiotic relationship that is worthwhile to both of us. Luckily, we're in a position where we don't need any one job we're not driven by money. We're driven by impact and influence. And so we don't need any one job to do that.
Okay, dudes. So to close off, I think Bronwyn's question was a good one, because this book actually gives you the tools to figure out why, which customer you're targeting, why you should be selling to them, how you tell a good story, how to build all of the things that you've been missing in the process of selling and telling a good story. So there is a link available right now before you leave. Check it in above the chat. Go and click on that link and buy the book right now. The 10 people receiving Asterix are... you will be contacted by Daily Maverick directly over email. Tin Swallow, Brad, Craig, Tabo Llewellyn, Rosalie, Marianne, Dennis, Peter, and Bronwyn. All of your questions were great. Rich, you, as usual, were not terrible. Thank you. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to launch this book with you. And I can't wait to give it another read.
Thanks so much, Nic. And I just want to end with one last little thing. It gave me so much joy that the questions that you asked, for the most part, are covered in the book. So I'm glad I was on the right track there. And then the final little thing, the reason I don't like to give away copies of this book is that if I couldn't convince you, if I couldn't sell you a story that you want to read this book, then I don't think you should. And then the other thing is, if I give you a book, the return of investment, you've not invested anything in it. So reading it is the investment, not the return. Whereas if you buy a book, the investment was the money you spent on it. The return on investment is you reading the book to get your value. And I want the book to be a return on investment, not the investment itself. Thank you so much, Nic. This has been amazing. I really, really appreciate all the effort you put in to make today great.
Absolute pleasure.
And to the Daily Maverick team as well. Thank you so much.
Go buy the book, folks. Go buy the book and tell other people to do the same. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.